one style of life to another follows a change of heart, or one's value and attitudes and way of thinking. This can happen in sudden and dramatic way, but for most of us, it is a slow and gradual process. St. Ignatius was a noble knight who, with a few soldiers, for worldly renown and prestige, courageously fought at Pamplona. Inspired by a cannonball, while recovering at Loyola, he read the life of Christ of St. Francis and Dominic. Inspired by the Spirit, he desired to imitate the saint by living a life of rigorous penance and undertake a pilgrim to Jerusalem. While discerning the movements of spirit within, his decision was confirmed by a visit of Our Lady and the child with the gift of chastity. Traveling to Montserrat as a formal renunciation of his former life, he secretly got rid of his clothes and dressed himself as a pilgrim. At Manresa, to become holy, he spent many hours in prayer and did much penance. After some initial consolation, during a period of darkness, he was troubled by various temptations and became depressed. In trying to confess all his sins, he was burdened with scruples. Then there was a transition from darkness to mystical light with an experience of the Trinity. Further, at Cardone, he had a decisive insight into spiritual matters and interior life. After that, to help souls, he was ready to provide assistance through his spiritual conversation. So also, begging became his usual way to obtain what he needed. Visiting the holy places in Jerusalem, he was filled with consolation and was determined to stay and work in the Holy Land. But on the Franciscan provincial's information, he obeyed, seeing it as God's will for him. This instilled in his mind that to follow Christ, one needs to have the attitudes of Jesus of doing Father's will in all things. On his return to Spain, he had to ponder many times on what he ought to do to please God. At Barcelona, he began his studies in Latin grammar. To further continue his studies, he walked to the University of Alcalá and then to Salamanca. Suspected of being an alumbrado, in both places he was imprisoned, questioned, and released on certain conditions. Therefore, Ignatius came to Paris in February 1528, chiefly to study and also gather some companions, as his former companions left him. At Saint Barbe, he had to live with Peter Faber and Francis Xavier. By 1534, he had also won over Linus, Salmeron, Bobadilla, and Rodriguez, who had done with spiritual exercises. So, on April 15th, 1534, at Montmartre, they made a vows of poverty and chastity, and to go to Jerusalem. Failing that, they agreed to place themselves at the disposal of the Pope. They walked to the Venice and waited for a passage, but that year there were no ships to the Holy Land. So, in May 1537, the companions began the return journey. On the way close to Rome, at Las Rota, Ignatius begged of Our Lady to place him under her son. Then he experienced the Father placing him with Jesus carrying the cross. Gathered in Rome, the friends in the Lord chose the name companions of Jesus. In November 1538, for the greater glory of God, they offered themselves to the Pope to accept any mission for the good of souls. Thus, in 16th century Europe, Ignatius became a new Knight of Christ. We have another saint of 20th century who changed her style of life. Born in Albania, Saint Teresa of Calcutta joined the Congregation of the Sisters of Loreto when she was 18 years old. After a short stay in England and Ireland, she came as a missionary to India. She was the principal of a school in Calcutta maintained by the sisters. In 1946, when Calcutta was bloodied by independence fight, she experienced a call within the call to work among the poorest of the poor. She left the convent, abandoned the black veil as a robe, chose a white sari with blue stripes, and immersed herself among the poor who lived on the streets. Soon her example was followed by others. In 1950, she founded the Missionaries of Charity and divided her life between prayer and various work of charity. She obtained Indian citizenship, won many awards, and on her death was honored by the Indian government. Numerous vocations followed in this congregation. Now there are over 3,000 sisters spread over many countries all over the world. In Sri Lanka too, there are sisters lived a simple life, praying, distributing food among the poor, caring for the orphans and aged, teaching catechism to the neglected in rural areas, etc. This shows that the Holy Spirit is active in the Church, even now gently guiding individuals, adapting themselves to the local cultures and the needs of the time.